by Matthew Previtt, who is the convener of the design and writing group that worked on faith-filled worship. We're delighted that you could join us this evening, Matthew. Just a note to say that we are recording this session this evening for those who haven't been able to attend. I hope that's okay with everybody. The session we did a couple of weeks ago is now available on the URC YouTube channel, as this will be not immediately, but in a week or so's time. So our aim this evening is to give you an insight into faith-filled worship, to see how it fits within the whole of Stepwise, and to look at what kinds of things participants will be doing as they follow this stream. As well as from Matthew, we'll also hear from a couple of other members of the design group with some clips from a pre-recorded interview that we made earlier. We'll also spend a bit of time in breakout rooms experiencing one of the activities from an early group session of faith-filled worship, and there'll be time for questions towards the end. If you've got questions as we go along, please, if you could put them in the chat, and we'll try and address those at the end when we take other questions too. In our first webinar a couple of weeks ago, we focused on faith-filled life, the opening stream of Stepwise. During that session, we spent some time looking at how Stepwise works and giving an overview of the whole program. I don't want to repeat all this tonight, so if you weren't able to join us for that first webinar, but want to find out more, then please visit the Stepwise pages of the URC website or drop us a line. And as I said, the recording of that session is now available on the URC's YouTube channel. I want to just give a quick reminder of how Stepwise works very briefly. And I'm going to share my screen to do that. And the opening stream of Stepwise is faith-filled life. And just to remind you that every Stepwise journey begins here. Having completed faith-filled life, you can then move on to one of the other Stepwise streams, including faith-filled worship, which, as its name suggests, focuses on worship. Faith-filled worship is designed to give participants the opportunity to explore the breadth and depth of Christian worship as part of their journey of discipleship. It also lays some foundations for participating in the preparation and leading of worship in churches and in other settings. The main aims of this stream are to explore the various building blocks of Christian worship, to think broadly about worship as a response to God's love and faithfulness, whether this be as an individual or in community, to look at how worship can be transformative, an experience where God is encountered and lives are changed, to discover how to hear, interpret and share God's word in scripture, prayer and preaching, to look at how to create contextual, meaningful and inclusive worship, and to equip participants for their discipleship journey and think about how worship is a central part of this. And so, as I said, we've got Matthew Previtt here with us this evening, and Matthew's going to tell us a bit about faithful worship and its background. So good evening, Matthew, and thank you for giving up your time to join us on this session tonight. Perhaps first of all, I could ask you to introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew Previtt. I'm a URC minister. I'm currently working as head of chaplaincy at Newcastle University up here in the northeast. And I convened the writing group that put together faith-filled worship.
Thanks, Matthew. I wonder then, could you say something about the principles that underpin faith-filled worship?
Yeah, in bringing together the faith-filled worship stream, we kept in mind the principles of Stepwise to deepen and explore our own discipleship. So rather than being a lay preaching course, faith-filled worship seeks to draw on people's experience of worship in the whole of life, not just in church on a Sunday, and to delve into the encounter with God that comes through worship in all its forms. Its purpose has been to give some understanding of the building blocks of worship, to explore these in more depth, and to think about how these may be used more widely and creatively.
Okay, so how is the stream structured? And perhaps you could just say a little bit about what's in it.
Yeah, so like all the streams of Stepwise, faith-filled worship is structured with materials that work across a wide range of ages and experiences. So it enables those with many years of sitting in a pew to link together with those who are new to this world of worship, and those from a wide range of worship experience. The common thread is that it invites participants, as do all the streams, to reflect on their own experience and to read and to consider other experiences and to understand more fully how worship can inform and shape not only the experiences of participants, but also to further the church's mission, further Christ's mission. At the end of each session, we've put this little section called Mission Possible, a bit like that, Mission Impossible, but Mission Possible, where participants are guided to think about how they may apply what they've learned and encountered, not only for themselves, but in the worshipping life of their church. And the stream is sort of broken into three main chunks. There are 12 sessions, and those are split into sort of three sections amongst them. Firstly, it's looking at broad themes about worship, including thinking about seasons of worship, about thinking about the lectionary and the use of the Bible, and then about what it means to be a worshipping community. And as a writing group, we did most of our writing during the pandemic over Zoom, and so we've been able to reflect on what the worshipping life has been like over these past 12 months, and what we may have learnt about what worship is in light of that, and what it means to be a worshipping community. The second section, the kind of mid part of the stream, goes into greater depth, exploring the breadth of prayer, preaching, and the encounter with God through signs and symbols, through the sacraments. And then the final section, the last 4 sessions, I think it is, takes what has been explored and goes beyond, thinking about how rules can be broken and worship can be formed into something that is truly creative, inclusive, and open to a risk-taking God.
Thank you. Sounds really, really encouraging, really exciting. And you said that faithful worship seeks to draw on people's experiences of worship in the whole of their lives, not just about the hour or so that we might experience worship on a Sunday. How does it do that?
I think we've all, as a writing group, we're particularly aware and in thinking about how to put the stream together, about the importance of worship throughout all that we do, and about the different ways in which different elements of worship, things like music and prayer, scripture, encounter with God, personal discipleship, corporate worship and mission all mix into our day-to-day lives, all form part of what it means to be disciples. So we've made sure that we've woven those together throughout the stream to reflect how those are woven together in our worship life, whether that be in formal Sunday worship, informal worship with toddlers, or in a care home, worship that we've experienced via Zoom, or in our own worship and our own devotional life. We've taken as a key and significant part of the stream to ensure that we reflect upon and build on what it is to have a confidence and a competence to understand and to lead worship that provides an encounter with God, so that as individual disciples we can each deepen our discipleship as we further our personal journey.
That's really helpful, thank you. Great, thanks Matthew. And thanks again for joining us this evening. You're going to hang around, and if we've got questions towards the end, then you'll be here and you can help us to answer some of those. As I said, thank you. And we'll hear from a couple of other members of the design group shortly. Matthew mentioned that the stream is in 3 phases, three chunks, I think is what Matthew said. And I just wanted to give you a bit more detail about that now. So the stream is made up of 12 sessions, and the first 5 sessions, sessions 1 to 5, form sort of the basic building blocks of worship, thinking about seasons, thinking about scripture, thinking about what we do and who we are as we gather as God's people in worship. And then sessions 6 to 8 are more about encountering and communicating with God, thinking about how God communicates with us through prayer and preaching, and also included in session 6 is something about the sacraments, about baptism and communion. And then sessions 9 to 12, the last 4 sessions, are perhaps a bit more practical in nature. Think about how we put into practice some of the things that we've been exploring in the earlier sessions. So we look at the shape of worship and liturgy in all its different forms, thinking about the spaces that we use for worship, not just our physical spaces, but our spiritual spaces too. And one of the questions there is about accessibility. We think about how we might be more creative in worship, perhaps taking risks and experimenting a little. And then finally, in the last session, we review the whole stream and see how our journey through faithful worship has given us some confidence and helped us to grow as disciples. The stream outline for faithful worship, as are all the stream outlines, are available to download from the URC website, from the introducing Stepwise pages. If you link from there into each of the streams, you'll find a more comprehensive guide to each of the sessions in all of the streams. So let's hear from a couple of other members of the design group. They are Fiona Bennett and Samuel Salungwe. Fiona is a URC minister serving in the Synod of Scotland in Edinburgh, and Samuel, a URC minister from Kettering in the East Midlands Synod. And I asked them to share with me their own thoughts about faithful worship from their experience of being part of the design group. tell me, who would you say faithful worship is for?
Well, faithful worship is for anybody who is interested to understand and explore worship as part of discipleship. Worship is our encounter with God that transforms us. And it's really valuable to take time to explore that a bit more. We can understand, by taking time to understand what worship is, and perhaps broadening our experience of worship, it can just equip us as Christians, and it can also give us skills if we happen to be also interested or feel called to lead worship. And I think that this stream does both. I think it offers space for both.
How do you see discipleship being developed through faith-filled worship?
The whole stream, it has got 12 sessions. But in each of the sessions, the participant, at the end of the day, they will actually locate themselves and understand, their level of discipleship. They can even ask themselves, in terms of worship, where am I as a disciple? So it's, they can't actually do that. And for example, talking about communicating with God, that's another area where one can say, well, how do I communicate to my God as a disciple? Am I able to do that without fear, without worry? Am I able to talk? Am I able to express myself as a disciple? So the stream itself helps. It does help someone to actually become confident in the way they worship and in the way they relate to their God.
And so, how would faithful worship encourage people to think about worship in ways that they perhaps hadn't done before?
Well, faithful worship invites us to think about worship from lots of different aspects, and to think about ways that worship engages effectively in different contexts and different settings, with different cultures and life experiences. We invite people to become aware of and explore the different spiritual styles, and even using our different senses, all of which can enable us to encounter God through worship, which is a transformational experience. So it opens up all of these possibilities.
And are there examples that you can think of from the material where people are encouraged to think about worshipping in different kind of contexts or settings?
Well, a lot of what we do is the background material, and we get people to think, and there are also practical exercises. So there's quite a bit of space to craft or to play with new ideas of worship within your group as well as on your own. So sometimes, we ask people to do things like, if you were invited to craft a short act of worship for the stall holders in the market, or for the Pride service, or for the festival, or something like that, something that's a little bit unusual, what might you do, and how might you use stories, Bible stories, life stories? How might you use symbols and senses and seasons and things that really make that worship an effective encounter for everybody who is participating?
So, as has been said tonight and previously, the group experience is the thing that a lot of Stepwise participants say is the thing that really made it for them, that was really helpful and the most significant part of participating in Stepwise. And so I want us this evening just to have a taste of that, because these webinars have been called Taste and See. So in order to give you a taste of Stepwise, it's only right that we should break into smaller groups just for a short time. And so what I want us to do this evening is to ask you to just think back. I'll put this on the screen so you can see what we're going to share. We're going to think about some of our own experiences of worship. So think back to the first experience of Christian worship that you can remember, or something that's perhaps from a while ago at least. And when you can think of an experience or something like that, then just note down, either if you've got a piece of paper and a pen next to you, or mentally note just 3 words that might describe that worship experience to you. Words that come to mind as you remember it. So, for example, if it was a Christmas type of service. It could have been a nativity, or it might have memories of people wearing tea towels on their heads, or the candles, or just something that would a word or words that come to mind to describe that act of worship. And then think about the most recent act of worship that you participated in, and do the same. Note down 3 words to describe that worship too. I'll just give you, I don't think we need to spend a long time doing this, so the first things that come into your mind are fine. And I'll just give you a minute just to do that before we I describe the next part. Okay, if you can't think of 3, then that's okay. But just some thoughts about those 2 experiences of worship. And so when we go into breakout rooms in a few moments, first of all, just introduce yourselves. There'll be 4 or 5 of you in the room, and then share a brief summary of that experience. Say why you have chosen the particular words that you've chosen, and what they relate to. And then when you've all shared those words, look to see if there are any themes or things that you all have in common amongst them. And then think about whether things have changed over time. Look at what's different and what remains the same. And then wonder, does this tell us anything about the nature of worship? So it's just to introduce yourself, to say why you've chosen those words, to see if there are words which you have in common, experiences that you have in common, or what the differences are, and think about how things may have changed over time. So we're going to spend 15 minutes in breakout rooms just to do that. If you've run out of things to say, then you might think about some of the questions you might want to ask us towards the end. But in my experience of breakout rooms, time goes pretty quickly, and there's usually some people who don't run out of things to say. So we'll see you all in about 15 minutes time. Good to have you all back. Hope you enjoyed that. The point, of course, was to give you a bit of an experience of a group session, but then we do that all the time, I guess. But the point of that comes in an early session of faithful worship to help us to think about how worship is both contextual but also timeless. So there are some things that you'll have shared that would have been in common with others, and you'll have seen in common with yourself, from the early experiences to the most recent, but some which are very much of the moment and the context and related to the present experience as well. And I think throughout the whole of the stream, we want to make that balance, make that point that there are elements of worship which stand for all times, and there are other parts which really do need to be seen in context and for the time, and the stream in lots of ways helps us to see how that works. We're going to just move on and hear again from Fiona and Samuel, because they reflected on what they felt was important about the group experiences in Stepwise. So we're just going to hear another short clip from Samuel and Fiona.
So there's quite a strong community aspect of faith-filled worship in the fact that the Stepwise works on the basis of group sessions. How does the group itself grow and develop into a community like that?
Yeah, we know individuals will come from different areas, of the community, and normally we have got our own theological, bias in the way we look at things, in the way we worship. But when we actually go and meet others, we form a worshiping community, and as we meet, we are able to actually learn from others. So it's when we come together, it's there's that opportunity to actually say, oh yeah, I think I didn't know about this thing. Oh yeah, I'm able now to understand that this is the way worship is supposed to be. Not only that, as a believer, we need to, if we are to grow, we need to learn from others.
Yeah, learning from others is a really important part of the whole of Stepwise. But it's not just a stream which gives people it's not like a build your own service kind of stream, is it? There's more depth to it than that, isn't there?
There's much more depth to it than that. There's a whole reflection on inclusion within worship as well, which is also about understanding the different life experiences we bring and the different gifts and perspectives. So when you think about the senses, you might think about people with different abilities and their experience of worship and what we can learn from their experience of worship, or people whose life experience is very different to our own, and how do we facilitate that within worship, and then how do we learn from it, and how does that enable us to encounter God more broadly and more closely. And I hope in this stream that people are able to taste lots of different ideas, but also gain lots of different perspectives, and to think about things from different ways, so that your own experience of worship is enriched through possibility and understanding, and also that you can offer and share that gift with others.
And so, how accessible do you think faithful worship is to different people who are coming from different places and maybe with different experiences?
Yeah, it is. It's the stream is very, very accessible. And one thing I liked about the stream is that you do not find in it, contain some theological jargons, that will scare someone. It's plain language. It's a daily use of language, the common words that we know. That's how the stream, and it is readable. The words are simple to understand, and in fact, when people come together and they share, whatever session they're doing, they'll be able to understand what they're doing.
Okay, so I wonder if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask of us as you've heard what's been said and you've thought about the stream. I'm opening the floor, as they say, for questions. I might not be able to see all of you. Steve's got his hand up.
Tentatively, but we had, I felt, a real good discussion in our small group about the importance of young people leading worship, and we sort of shared our own experiences when we've experienced young people leading worship, which isn't that common, and we talked about that. But I guess the question is, how does Stepwise faith-filled worship actually enable and empower young people to lead worship themselves? How young people friendly is it, etc.?
We would hope, I think, that that the material is accessible for people of all ages. Obviously, there has to be a lower limit, I guess, but you're probably thinking of early teens upwards. Those who are thinking about being part of a worshipping community, and I think there's an encouragement to see worship as an all age experience, not just all age worship as a special act of worship, but worship is something that is intergenerational in itself, and I would hope that within the material that there would be an encouragement for younger people, you know, and others to participate in worship in a leadership sense, but also to participate more meaningfully themselves in that act of worship. So if they're learning about what worship is, then they might you know, understand and see worship in a different way to perhaps how they'd seen it before. Does that? I don't know if Matthew wants to say anything in addition to that, but
yeah, well, just to say that we when putting together the stream, we really did think about a broad range of participants in the stream taking part in faith-filled worship, and yes, a kind of the possibility of there being a young person, a teenager who might be interested in worship, might be in, say, a worship band or something, and is actually just quite interested about finding out a little bit more about how worship fits together, about what it's about, what the building blocks are, and I think we've been really keen to make sure that we start with that kind of basic building block stage, and think about what some of those key kind of fundamentals of worship are for us as worshippers, and then kind of delve into that with greater depth as we go through the stream, and yeah, finding opportunities. You know, the session that we do called Breaking Open the Word, which is ostensibly our session about preaching, is actually thinking about how we break open the word in all manner of ways, how we might do it for particularly for children, perhaps how we might be able to engage with children, and you know, how you might do that family talk in worship, how you might go and speak with a play group, but likewise how you might engage in a care home context, or in a more conventional Sunday morning. So we're really keen to make sure that the content and the material has got that kind of stretch and that ability to engage with across the ages. We've used quite a lot of you know, Stepwise uses a lot of different media as part of the approach. It's not all text. It's I think there's perhaps you always will find text, but we've tried wherever possible to simplify that, to find videos that perhaps more engaging, or other ways of interacting with the material that aren't you know, that aren't undergraduate level theology, but are actually, and I think Samuel said it in that video, you know, attempting really to enable people to engage on a theological level, but without necessarily using the jargon that we perhaps sometimes can use as barriers to stop people engaging.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Thank you. Dalian.
I think I mean, we do understand that it's firstly a discipleship course or journey, but I'm going to ask this question on behalf of the Lancashire group. There's 9 of us tonight on the screen, which many of the people are in worship groups already, but there's about 3/4 of the group would like to use this to become accredited lay preachers. What is the kind of steps from doing all the sessions, and then what else do we need to do to become accredited lay preachers?
Okay, so Stepwise is part of that journey. I think there are still decisions to be made, and they'll be made by the denomination over the next week at Mission Council, and then beyond that, about locally recognised worship leaders and then assembly accredited lay preachers. We don't see that Stepwise is the route by which somebody would then become an assembly accredited lay preacher, but it might be part of that journey. There are proposals to use the resource centres for learning to take people that step further, if you like, to assembly accreditation. But Stepwise, certainly has its part to play in that, and those who, I mean, the whole of Stepwise is designed to meet people where they're at, so, and take them further. So I would say that for your group, that if they do the 12 sessions of faithful worship and participate in the Mission Possible task that Matthew's spoken about, and then maybe the other things that we will put in to enable them to go for locally recognised worship leading, then they'll be well on their way. But Stepwise won't, and was never designed really to take people the whole way just through faith-filled worship. So I hope that your group will enjoy doing faithful worship, and I'm certain that they will find themselves better equipped and more confident and competent in what many of them are doing already. Is that is that an answer to the question?
Kind of, but let's wait for next week at Mission Council and see what they come up with.
Yeah.
I think it's hard because we kind of compare it with TLS Lite, and we know it's very different, but I mean, there isn't really a route yet for anybody to become accredited lay preacher since TLS Lite was.
Yeah, that's coming. That's coming. That's part of the paper that will be presented to Mission Council next week.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Any other questions? If you do have further, Derek, sorry, yeah, carry Derek.
Sorry. I wondered if you could tell us just a little bit more about Mission Impossible, because some of us may be familiar with the fact that the first stream, Faith-Filled Life, ends with a group project. Is it analogous to that, or is it?
So there's thanks, Derek. Yeah, there are two elements. There is every stream has a sort of practical task. Every session has a practical task attached to it. So, for example, if I'm looking at the stream outline, session 7, for example, communicating with God is about prayer. So the Mission Possible task there is to invite participants to take part in an act of to pray publicly, if they're in an act of worship in one way. So to prepare some prayers and to do that. So that's a kind of, and every session has a similar kind of task. And then there is a group project, which is to, as a group, put together an act of worship, but it's got to be something that's different. I mean, it's intended to stretch people and to make them think a bit differently, and it's not, it's got to be creative. And so from session 9 until session 12, there's an invitation there over what could be 2 or 3 months to put together an act of worship and worship and lead it in some kind of context. So, but again, there are instructions within the stream for that, and flexibility and the invitation to be creative. So yeah, 2 things: Mission Possible and a group project. Okay. Well, I'm aware of the time, and we did say that we would try and finish by 8 o'clock. I can't see anybody else waving their hands at me. If you've got questions or comments to make, then you can certainly contact us, get in touch. I'm just sharing my screen very briefly again. So as I said at the beginning, that Faith-Filled Life is the opening stream of Stepwise, and people who have done Faith-Filled Life can then move on to one of the other streams, and that could be Faith-Filled Worship, but you need to do Faith-Filled Life first. If you're interested in either in Faith-Filled Life or finding out more about Stepwise in general, then please contact the person who's coordinating Stepwise in your synod, or you can email Marion Brown on the email address there, or you can find us at urc.org.uk/Stepwise. We're going to end. I'm going to leave the final words to Fiona and Samuel, who have got an invitation to people to join Faith-Filled Worship.
So what encouragement would you give to somebody to do Faith-Filled Worship?
I would say, come in. There's a lot of material. Faith-Filled Worship, as one of the 5 streams, is a resource. It is a resource, and it's a resource to actually help us to grow as disciples. We are not yet there. We are still on a journey. We are still on a journey. So we if we want to grow in our faith or in our discipleship, Faith-Filled Worship is one of the streams that one can do.
I think it's a really interesting balance of having lots to think about and also quite a lot of space to play and have quite a lot of fun. And so I would hope that nobody would participate in this and think, well, that was dull. I'd hope you come away really enriched, both in depth and also in breadth. I think it offers both of those experiences. I hope it engages with lots of different learning styles. I hope it promotes lots of different spiritual styles, and that seeing that in itself will be enriching, but also that you will come away with an encounter of God and an encounter through the people that you're with that should be transformational. I really hope so.
There you go. Well, thank you all for coming this evening. It's been really good to see you all. I hope you found it helpful and learned something about Faith-Filled Worship and been encouraged and inspired to go further and to think further about your own discipleship journey and what you might do in response to that call. If you're interested in the rest of Stepwise, then in a couple of weeks' time, we've got our 3rd webinar on Faith-Filled Community on the 23rd, and then a little bit of a break because of Easter, and then the final 2 streams on the 13th and 22nd of April. So it's been good to see you. I'd say thank you again to Matthew and to Marion and to Thomas for teching us this evening, and to all of you for coming and for your attention. It's been good to see you. Have a good night.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
David. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Thank
David. Thanks.
you. Thank you very much.